I brought this picture because it's a picture of my mum, myself, and my oldest son. And it's 2020, and it was the last picture taken of my mum, me, and my son together before she passed away. And this picture, to me, represents the break of the cycle that I went through, because I had a traumatic childhood with my mum. But we got over it as I was an adult, not too long before this picture taken, to be fair. I was born into drugs, prostitution, alcohol. A lot of things that I'd seen as a kid was traumatic. So, beatings, drugs, abuse, violence. These are the things that was normal to my everyday existence as a kid, and that had an effect on me growing up. So the kind of effect it had on me is down to the prostitution situation. I had a lot of anger because my mum had a lot of problems, and my mum moved me away to London when I was like 7 or 8 years old to run away from her problems. But she brought me with her, and in London I never had no family, never had no friends there when I first got there. And I was exposed to so much more. And my mum used to give me a lot of material things. So I'd have the latest trainers, the latest clothes, the newest computer, anything material you could imagine. My mum got that for me. I hated it because I knew how she got the money for it. My mum had this thing where if she gave me stuff, that was her way of showing love. But to me, it was a way that always showed me how she got that money, which means, does she really love me? And because my mum was so caught up in her own life, she didn't really out to know how to be a mum. She was a young mum. All those things made me build up a lot of anger. So my mum, for instance, she could hit me, but I would never hit back my mum. But I'd have anger because someone's hitting me and I can't hit them back. So when I went out into the streets, if anybody got me angry or anybody, messed with me, got me violated or any sort of thing, I would lash out. So I'd be violent, I'd fight people, and that was like my release. So really the people I was fighting on the street possibly could be in my head, I'm fighting my mum, but I wouldn't really fight my mum. But these people out here are trying to make me feel the way that my mum did at times. So that used to make me an angry person, always prepared to overcome anything that made me feel intimidated. London was like a big city with no pity. So it was completely different to Wolverhampton. So in Wolverhampton, you've got this people don't see it, but I do, because I've been to other places where it didn't have it. There's a lot of love in Wolverhampton. So although you and someone might argue with each other, they might have a friend that they talk to, but they talk to you as well. That friend wouldn't alienate you or take up those kind of arguments. It used to be like they'd still help you out and stuff. It's like in Wolverhampton, there was a lot of Jamaican people came in the Windrush, so a lot of our parents knew each other. We went to church when we was young and stuff, so even though you don't know him directly, but you know his family, you know his stuff, so it's like Wolverhampton had this love, but London did not have that. London was different, people just doing their own thing. There was so many different types of people there, different nationalities, things I didn't even see before when I went there. So everything was much faster as well. So the crime rate, the violence, the activities was so much more. Like when I got to London, I used to go, like my mum had a house here that had slide doors in my bedroom. So that was me. Once 10, 11, 12 o'clock, I'm out. I'll leave my house. I'm like 10 and I'll be going to West End. They used to have this place called Chocadero, all these arcade machines and stuff, yeah. So I used to go there in the middle of the night and just come back when I come back. My mum used to bust my ass when I come back if she caught me, but sometimes she didn't catch me. But I used to do all this stuff, and it's like because I was brave when I was younger. Not necessarily brave, but because I had such a traumatic time at home, I wasn't really scared of nothing outside. I used to feel very lonely in the fact of no father and no family members. So older people used to make me feel cared for, loved maybe. So I used to have this thing with hang out with older people, and because I used to have money, I could pay for stuff. So it was almost like I could manipulate what we was going to do for the day, because it would depend on what I wanted to do. Before I came back, it was like I decided to go back to my dad. I said my mum when I was 13 was having an argument. She was, getting all physical and stuff. So I just held her and I remember saying, look, I'm going to go live with my dad because I can't take this no more. And she said to me, oh, your dad's a crackhead, your dad's a drug addict, this, oh, you think the grass is greener on the other side? I said, I know. But when I said I know he was a drug addict, didn't really know what that was. But I watched New Jack City at them times and I seen Pookie. So I seen him as a drug addict, but I didn't really understand what it meant, but I seen what it was. So when I used to go to my dad's house, I could maybe find the drug pipes and stuff like that. So I connected that. But that didn't matter because the life I had right there, I couldn't continue with it. It would have made me do stuff that I didn't want to do. So I went to go and live with my dad. When I went to live with my dad, that was a complete culture change. My dad was on drugs, so anything I would do, he would hustle me. He would emotionally blackmail me into giving my money, or if I was selling drugs, I started selling drugs at those young ages. My dad would hustle me, so I'd give him the drugs, and he would always end up making me get into debt and stuff like that. So at that time, there was like this scheme going on in Blakenhall at Villiers' house, and it was giving flats to people that were 16, and just before I was 16, about a month or so before, they gave one to me, and I think my auntie might have been a guarantor or something, but they gave me a flat in Blakenhall when I was 16. So from then, I lived on my own. But imagine getting a flat when you're 16. All your friends are coming to that house, innit? And so all my friends used to come to the house and we used to smoke weed, drink drinks and stuff like that. But at this time, I ain't really got no one to support me. So at this time, my crime levels are stepping up now because I need to feed myself, I need to survive. And the only way I knew how to do that was a criminal way. In fact, I did try to go for a YTS scheme, yeah, and I did it. It's like a youth training scheme. So what you could do, you go and do his training at a shop, and my one was at Soccer Sports in town, and I did 35 hours. I remember doing it, I was thinking, oh, this is long, but I remember doing it, and at the end of the week, do you know how much they paid me? £35. At that point, that was me. Work was finished. I was never gonna work again. That was my mindset. Selling weed first of all, and then started selling Class A drugs, because my dad was a drug addict. It's like, it felt like too easy to sell drugs because my dad could show me people who was taking drugs at the time. So it seemed like an easy thing to do, but it wasn't, because it came with so much pressure, so much manipulation from my dad. And also, I used to have a lot of guilt because my dad's a drug addict. And I used to see my dad in just distressful times, you know what I'm saying? That ain't the life he wanted. And there's me selling drugs to people. So I used to see them sometimes in distressed states, and it used to affect me emotionally till it got to the point that I couldn't actually sell drugs to people like that no more. So I used to sell drugs to my friends, and they would sell drugs to other people, because somehow I felt like I was more, justified in doing that, because I didn't have to see the pain that was causing to other people. So that's kind of like how I used to get by at that time. So I've been to prison numerous times, but the first time that led to going to prison was by the age of 15, and I've come back to Wolverhampton, and when I came back to Wolverhampton, I kind of created like a crew. It wasn't like a gang per se. Them times were like crews, and it was called the Diffusion Crew, TDC. And it was the only crew really in Wolverhampton that had different people from different areas. Everybody was in it. I mean, what it really was there was girl groups all around Wolverhampton, like Heathtown, Pendleford, Eastfield, and they used to sing and do dancing and stuff. So it was more like that was the boys to the girls kind of thing, yeah. That's kind of like how it started. But then, because I got involved in that crew mentality, it didn't take long before we started carrying weapons and going out and fighting people and stuff. So I was 15 and I'd gone to a party with my friends and my cousins, and we got into a madness, and basically people got stabbed. Multiple people got stabbed on that day, and we all got locked up for it. So I got locked up for attempted murder, section 18 times 2. I was accused of stabbing somebody on that day, but on that particular case I got not guilty. There wasn't enough evidence to produce for me, a friend and a cousin, and we got released. I'd been locked up for a serious offence at the time, so when you come out and you've been locked up for that, and because I wasn't locked up for long, it didn't really impact on me in terms of consequential. It was more like I got boosted from it, like people was like, oh, right, you've been to jail for that X, Y, Z. So I'd been to prison again. So the next time, I was still selling drugs at that time. So there would be different times where I've been arrested for possession of intent to supply of different drugs and stuff. But I've been placed on charges, remanded, but then I got not guilty. So that was like 3 or 4 times before I was 19. So by the time I was 19, I'd now gone to prison 5 times. But when I was 19, I got convicted for another Section 18, wounding with intent. I went to a nightclub in town. It was called the Beach Nightclub. Everyone used to go there. I had this particular knife and I used to have it on a key ring and I had it in my pocket. So I've gone into this nightclub and when I've gone in there, I knew everybody. Like, I was popular at that stage, so I'm in there, I'm having a good time. But this guy just kept staring at me and he was about 6'4". And at that time I was small and slim. So I felt intimidated by him, so I kept thinking, no, what's this guy staring at? But then I started getting angry, started thinking, you know what? Who was he staring at? Then I remembered I had my knife. So once I remembered I had the knife, that's it, my whole body changed, my face changed, my attitude changed. I started staring at him and he hit me. I fell on the floor. I jumped up and I stabbed him on the crowded dance floor in front of everybody. And like, I ran out of the club. But I couldn't get my way out of there because I didn't know how to get out. But then by the time I got out, by the next couple of days, I was locked up again. And this time I got convicted for Section 18 and I got 6 years. Before it hit me, I already knew I had the knife, so because my behavior changed. So once I remembered I had my knife, that was it. I started staring at him. I started being more, I don't know, confrontational because I had my knife. But if I didn't have my knife, I would have tried to avoid the situation much more because survival would kick in. My mind would tell me that this isn't a sensible thing to do. But because I had the knife, my ego's kicked in and it's telling me this is what I'm gonna do. That's something that I learned later, but at the time, I didn't really know all of that. That was my behavior. Felt threatened. So because I felt threatened and I felt embarrassed and all these things compiled into one, that made me act like that. I genuinely did not expect to get 6 years because at that time, people were getting like 2 years and 3 years for Section 18. And I got 6 years, but I believe I got the 6 years because of the things I kept getting off with before. So now it's time to catch me, and they gave me 6 years. And I didn't even know you had to go for parole. I didn't know what parole was. And parole is like you have to go for good behavior in order to get out halfway through. So I didn't really know that. But when the judge gave me the 6 years, I just didn't believe it was real. I thought it was a lie. It was hard to take, but you have to do it, don't you? At that time, I just had my son, so that's my first child. He'd just been born like 6 months before. But for me personally, I had such a broken childhood that I didn't have sentiment. I didn't miss people because I didn't have close relationships with anybody for me to really miss them like that. I was a lonely person. So when I went to prison, it's like I kind of knew I was always going to end up in prison because of the lifestyle that I chose to live. So it wasn't a surprise to me that that happened. And when I was in prison throughout that time, I didn't take it serious, first of all. Just doing what I wanted to do, phones, drugs, just doing what I want to do because I didn't really take it serious until I realized you had to go for parole because I didn't know that I would have to do an extra year. And like what it was is one day, I used to phone my son's mum all the time and ask how my son is and stuff every other day. And like 1 year had gone into my sentence and I phoned and I said, oh, you all right? She says, no, not really. I said, why, what's up? She said, it's your son. I said, what's wrong with him? She said, he needs some stuff. I said, stuff like what? She explained what it was, like things he needs, clothes, X, Y, Z. I said, well, I ain't got no money. So that was one point where I had a realization moment that my son needs me and I need to get out of prison. So I started to try and fix up at that stage. I started to do a bit better. I started to keep out of trouble and stuff. And I managed to get parole at 3 years. But before I got out for parole, Wolverhampton was changing. So I was in prison, like 2001, I got that sentence and I never come out until 2004. But in between that time, from 2001 to 2004, Wolverhampton changed, all the guns, the gangs started to step up their violence. So people who I used to think was nobody effectively, suddenly got hold of a gun, started shooting people or robbing people that I thought was somebody that was bad, man. So when I'm in prison, I started to get paranoid. Started thinking, rah, when I get out, man can't do this to me, man can't do that to me, because I kept hearing different people getting violated, and people who I thought were bad, man, basically. But I'm thinking, nah, that can't happen to me. So it's like my mind started preparing already for the kind of things that I was going to come up against outside, because I kind of conditioned my brain that that's the lifestyle that I live. So when I came out, it's like I was almost prepared and ready for anybody to try to do any of these things to me. That person what I got the 6 years for, I'm remorseful for that, for what I did to that person, because he wasn't a road person anyway. Like, not to say that that justifies anything, but he wasn't causing any argument believing that he's going to end up getting stabbed that day, and I believe it caused him a lot of injury. I am really sorry for that particular thing. Other things that I've done, maybe not so much sorry for the people, because I believe that that was life on the streets, but I am sorry for the impact I caused my kids, and that is what helped me change later on, once I learned sentiment. So when I was in prison, in order to get parole, you have to do courses, behaviour courses. So at that time I did ETS, which is called Enhanced Thinking Skills. I did Think First, which again is about enhancing your thinking skills. I've done anger management, and I also done, I think I did dysfunctional family counselling, right? That was education. And that was learning me a lot of stuff, because when I did dysfunctional family counselling, it's like I learned behaviours that are like responses to things that you go through. So then I started to realise some of my behaviours that I've done, although I did them, it's not really my fault like that, because I didn't know any better really at that time, and I felt like what I was doing was necessary out of the limited choices that I had. But then when I started to look into it and realise that your brain wires up different when you go through certain traumas when you're young, that helped me kind of like begin the forgiveness of myself, because I obviously didn't ever feel good about the lifestyle that I was living. Although I did that, I never felt good about it. I never ever felt proud of myself. I just felt like I'm a survivor, I'm a leader, I have to do what I've got to do. I didn't know I had anxiety then, because I don't think people talked about anxiety in the 2001 and 2 and 3 and 4. I don't think that was really a word they was using. I was very anxious, because at the end of the day, I was part of a crew when I went to prison, and I'm part of all of these people who are now involved in these firearms, these guns, gangs. So I felt as though no matter what, I'm going to have to choose who is going to be my social group, who is going to be my friends. And when I'm hearing these things going on, I'm thinking it's never going to happen to me. So I was anxious, and I was obviously, it was messing with my thought process to the point of where I was constantly almost like waiting for that to happen, effectively looking for that to happen so that I could, I don't know, act out what I prepared in my mind or something. But later on in life, I got another sentence, which was IPP, which is called Indeterminate Sentence for Public Protection, which is a life sentence. And I got that in 2006. I got locked up for it and convicted 2007, and I got an IPP with a minimum tariff of 7 years. So at the time when it came out, it only just came out into law, I think in 2005. And what it was meant for was Britain's worst criminals, the 1,000 of the worst criminals it's supposed to be for. But within 6 months, they gave 5,000 people the charge, which meant there was a complete crash within the system, because we was classed as lifers. It meant that you had to do courses to get released from prison. If you don't do the course, you can't get out. So what we had then is a lot of mental health issues kicking through with all these IPPs not knowing what the sentence was. I had a 7-year tariff. My tariff was one of the longest out of people's. Mine was in which 14-year sentence. So I had to do 7 years, which was longer than the most people. So when I was watching people deteriorate because they couldn't get released from prison, when I mean deteriorate, I mean their mental health going crashing down, they're taking drugs, they're being this religion, that religion. They're trying anything and anything to try and cope with the idea that they're locked up with no release date. So when I'm seeing what's happened to those people and they're losing their head when they go for parole, I was more taking note of why they never got parole. So I used to read their answers as to why they didn't get it. And what I started to try and do was build a way so they couldn't say no to me. and effectively try not to get involved in violence, because that is the number one issue. If you get involved in violence and you're in prison for violence, it's hard to explain that you're not going to be violent when you get out from prison. I'd got out in 2004, and like I said, I heard that Wolverhampton had changed and all these guns and everything started going on. So I felt compelled to get myself prepared and ready for the people that was out here. So I've got out, and when I got out, I got involved in an incident. It happened in Wolverhampton city centre, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, middle of town. I got into an argument with this boy, and he pulled out a gun. During that time, I just hit him, and when I hit him, he dropped the gun, so I grabbed the gun. And during this, we got into a fight, but throughout this, the gun went off and hit me in the face and bust my head open, and I ran off. But I grabbed that gun, but when I ran to my car, I never had no car keys. I realised that I dropped them. So that boy's got my car keys, and at that time, you know, we was involved in the street life, and I felt embarrassed that he's got my car keys. So I ran and threw the gun behind the wall, I hid it, and I come back to my car, wanting to make sure that he didn't come and take my car. So I'd phoned a tow truck to come for my car. But at the time, one of my friends had heard what happened because they was in town, so they come running by, and he kind of had a knife on him, so I took it off him just in case. And basically I was waiting there for the tow truck to come for my car, and this guy basically came back with his friends. There was a guy driving past on a motorbike. He seen where he was, jumped off, he took off a rucksack, gave him some guns, and he just jumped out, started shooting at me in the middle of town. But at that time, I was angry and I was embarrassed, so I was mad. So I ran after him, kind of kicked him over. His other friend had a gun. I ended up stabbing that person, and my cousin was there, hit him with a brick, and we kind of ran off from town. But all of this was on CCTV. It was in the middle of town. People were scared, people were frightened. You can imagine, just unacceptable. Within a few days, I was locked back up again, and every person that was involved that day also locked back up. So I ended up getting locked up with my co-defendants. So I actually went to prison with my co-defendants, but my co-defendants weren't my friends. They was trying to kill me. So in the first stages of the first few years, I was just involved in all sorts of stuff, you know, got phones, I'm phoning people, having parties in prison and stuff like that. We used to get hold of wine, get hold of MDMA, and have parties in the cell. So much so that it got leaked to the newspaper. So I was in the news of the world. I was the first person to ever be exposed for having mobile phones and being on the internet in prison. So they put a big article, and that took a drastic change in my life because I made the prison look bad because of the security situation. They put me on something called GOAD, which is good order and discipline. And I got put down the block, which means you don't see anyone at all. This is what it is. So you stay in a cell, you've got no TV, you've got no radio, just a cell. And you have to come out singly for your food and go back for your food. You can have half an hour exercise and that's it. And I was down there for nearly 3 months, and that almost broke my mind, because it's hard enough to be in jail, but when you can't speak to no one, can't see no one, it started to mess with my head. So I was getting so mad and so angry at the point that I felt like I wanted to attack an officer or something so that they could kick me out of the prison. So I explained to them, look, right now you've got me in the block for so long that you're gonna make me do something crazy. So they ended up shipping me out to the Isle of Wight, which is called Parkhurst. I had to catch a boat to prison. When I went down there, that started to make me book up my ideas. Because when I went down there, the fact that I was so far from home, it meant that my visits couldn't be every week like they used to be, because visits used to be £150, £200 visits, because you had to come down, catch a train, or then catch a hoverboat, then stay overnight, then go back and stuff. So this is when I started to realize that my actions have consequences on me. So when I was in that prison, it was different because it was a long-term prison. My relationship, by that time I had 2 kids. So my relationship with my son was always good because he'd always come to visit me all the way through my time in prison. And when I got out before, I was out for like 2 years, and I spent a lot of time with my son. I took him on holidays, just me and him, took him to do everything he could do. So we had a good relationship. And when I was in prison, I didn't really understand the effect it was having on my children, because when they would come and see me, he'd be smiling, happy, and we'd be happy to see each other. And I'm more indulged in my own feelings at that time, so I didn't really understand the impact it had on it until I got out from prison. So when I got out from prison, that's when I realized the impact it had on my children. So I had another daughter just before I got locked up for my IPP sentence. I had a daughter, she was 3 months old when I went to prison. So when I came out, she was actually 7. And then it started to realize the impact it had on them, because they tell me the experiences at school. Like, you know, your dad's in prison, people taking the mick out of them, you know, like things where their dads can go places, but their dad can't, you know, feeling embarrassed to even talk about your dad because your dad's in prison. So all of that stuff. And like with my oldest son as well, he obviously feels like I wasn't there for him when he was young, going through his, you know, adolescent years, which I wasn't because I was in prison. But in my head, I thought I was there for him because I would phone him and could send him money and things like that, but that wasn't enough. And I didn't understand that until I got out of prison from that sentence. I'd say Jibo and Gary are the same person, because anything that Jibo done or Gary done, it's the same person. But what it is Jibo's an alter ego that I developed at a young age to protect me. So Jibo was a person who, like, if not in a third person, but when I was Jibo, it was like I had to live up to that pretense. I had to live up to being Jibo, the leader of this gang, Jibo, the man who don't take nothing from no one. And I was trapped in Jibo. But Gary, I refused to accept him when I was young, so no one couldn't call me that. I wouldn't even answer you if you called me Gary, because I felt Gary was weak. Because Gary is the one that went through a lot. When I was young, so when I think about that, I'm replaying how my mind was. Gary was always vulnerable, but Jibo wasn't. So it's like, that was my defense mechanism basically against my vulnerabilities. So Jibo is definitely like the same as me. I'm still there, but later on, now when I've come into Gary, here is when I got out from that IPP sentence, I got recalled, which means I got sent back to prison. And I got sent back to prison for nothing. So all I did was I applied for car insurance, and there was a question that said, have you got any previous convictions? I know, unspent convictions, it said, and I didn't understand what that meant. So I thought, no, because I've done all my time, I did more than my time, so I put no. The police come and arrested me for that, locked me up and sent me to prison, recalled me on my license. So that started to mess with my head, going to prison for something that you didn't, like, for nothing at all. Imagine what that feels like. You're in prison on a never-ending sentence, because now I'm back on recall on my life sentence. I don't have a release date at all. I didn't do anything to come to prison, so I don't know how I'm gonna get out. So at that point, my mind was battered. I was under a lot of pressure. And I got out after 10 months, but then they sent me straight back after 5 weeks. And I knew they was gonna send me back before that. So I was out in that 5 weeks, and in that 5 weeks, I couldn't eat well because I knew they was gonna send me to prison. Everything I ate tastes like cardboard. The pressure and stress in my head was overwhelming. I'd see people walking towards me. If I didn't recognize them, I'd run off because I thought this was the police coming to try and lock me up. And one day I seen this guy named Joe Jackson. He's my friend's dad, and like he's a religious person. And I was having a conversation with him, and I was talking to him, and he was saying, Gary, the way you talk is very powerful. He goes, and that's why the police don't like you. He says, because you have the power to be very influential. He says, but you're talking all this powerful stuff, but when people look at you, they just see Jibo. They just see what you have done and the things that represent you. He says, you have to go away and go and do a Moses. Go and do your sabbatical, and the things you're talking now, go and walk that walk. And when you come back and talk what you've been walking, the people will listen to you. And it's like that rang in my head. But 2 weeks after that, I got locked back up again. So I started to go to the library, started looking at Archibald. My mind was telling me exactly where to look. I was looking at things that was relevant to my situation. I started looking at different law books, and then I collated all the things around my particular sentence and around how I've got locked up, and also around my original sentence. And I really started to understand laws. how they developed. But when I got released again, I was on God was just in my head. Not so much religious way, like a Christian, Muslim, or spiritually connected to God and also to the message of Jesus. So when I think Jesus, Yeshua, Isa, whichever one you want to call it, it's the same person, but it's a different variation of what people believe. Yeah, I started to think, you know what, I'm just going to do the best that I can do. Don't want to harm no one. Don't want to do anything bad. I'm just going to do the best that I can. So right now I'm an anti-knife crime trainer and a youth mentor, structured, therapeutic. So what that means is I work with kids from the age of 14 to 18, and I work with them around youth gang violence and around the emotional trauma that's caused with that, and then give them solutions and positive ways to change their mindset, which then can help you change your life. I'm also an anti-knife crime trainer, and I go into schools and I talk to young people about grooming, around being involved in joint enterprise, the impact of knife crime, the consequences, and also I tell them my story of what I went through when I was young and how my life fell into crime. And I got into that because my cousin, he got out of prison. He'd done longer than me, and he got out of prison and he managed to set up a mentoring company. And I was really impressed because I've always wanted to help young people, but I didn't think there was a space and a place for people like me with the kind of convictions that I had to do that. But my cousin came out and he opened up and successfully was doing really well with young kids. So I started to work with him first of all. And from that now I understood the impact that I was making with the young people. And I just built from there and developed. And then I've just gone off and do my own now. So I offer my services independently to different people. So it could be the Wolverhampton Council, Probation Service, the West Midlands Police, VRU, any of these people. And I do programs with young people. So I can do one-to-one, or we can do programs around what we're trying to achieve. Okay guys, today we're at Bishop Challenge now. I've been here for the 4th time, and here's some more feedback.
Well, firstly, I thought it was incredible, really powerful, had real strong impact, and our kids were absolutely hanging on every word that you said. And you really left them knowing in no doubt that they need to really empower themselves and respect themselves. What a strong message.
Thank you. So in the schools that I go to, and I just do like an input and I talk about my childhood and the impact it had on me, people will come to me at the end and they will say, oh, I really relate to that because my parents went to prison. And one person in particular said to me, look, my dad went to prison just not long ago, and now my mum has gone, mental health issues gone through the roof. He says, I'm the only boy in the house. I have to now become the man of my house. He says, I feel like going outside and just attacking someone. I'm so angry and so stuff. And I explained to him, the way you're feeling is natural to feel like that. So you shouldn't punish yourself for having those thoughts. What you should do is recognize that you've told me about it and that you're prepared to find an alternative way. So take strength in that. And I felt to myself, when you tell somebody that they're not mad or they're not crazy for thinking certain things, it helps them then be able to stop thinking like that, or at least categorize it that they're never going to do that. It's just a thought. And they're trying to find opposite things or better things to do. Because I've done everything organically, meaning that my passion and my desire to make a change within myself and then my community, that's what drives me to do what I'm doing. So in the beginning stages, I was doing things voluntary, doing things for probably less money and stuff because I really just wanted to make a difference and make a help. But because I've done such a good job, I have built myself up a good reputation within the services. But what I try to do is reach back to my social circles, not small social circles role, but people that I know who are in areas like me that are doing similar work, and I'm trying to get them to work with me, or so we could do something together. Because what I struggle with is I think people still look at me as Jibo. They don't really see that I'm Gary and that I've excelled from what I've been through, and I've used that now to better myself. Yeah, and basically I'm in a position where I'm just good at what I do, meaning I'm good at interacting with young people and helping them look at themselves to then start to try and build a better positive outcome for their life. I have a really good rapport with young people, but I don't have the necessary other skills which can take you to the next level, which other people do have. And I would love for people to be part of what I'm trying to do, because I've got a big goal to achieve at the end.
Hey guys, so here we are at Moseley. We're going to get some more feedback from another workshop.
Hello, I'm Miss Brand, Pastoral Manager for Year 11, and I'm also the Senior Pastoral Manager. We've had Gary in today, and boy was it brilliant. Every year group was engaged, and when he told his story, it's amazing, and to see somebody come from so far with nothing to turn out and turn his life around, that touched a lot of our young people. So even if Gary only saves one, I'm proud of him, and well done, Gary. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So what I keep on doing is representing myself the best that I can in the work areas that I come into. I also engage with people and share my ideas. A lot of people say don't share your ideas because people will steal them. I don't have that worry, because to be honest, if someone stole my big idea and they made it happen, I'll be honest, I'll be really, really happy that it actually happened, you know, because it's the outcome that I'm chasing. I'm not chasing anything else. I want the outcome to be everything. So what I've been doing is I've been telling lots of people, like, so I kind of like met an MP personally. So he invited me to his house. I went to his house and I talked to him, and he explained to me how I would go about getting investors. He explained to me what I need to do in order to put myself in a strong position so that when I'm going to these people, that they will invest in me. And this is all the processes that I'm doing. So all the work that I do in terms of working with young people, trying to inspire my community to do as much as we can for our community, then throughout that, then people should believe in my journey. So when I'm ready and I've got it all put together, I'm hoping that by that time I've built a network of people who are like-minded, that can see the vision and can see the benefit of what that would be and what that would bring. In terms of understanding to get to each different level in order to be a better service and to be able to widen it up so that I could utilize other people's skills and people could utilize my skills, I need other people and I need direction. So my ultimate goal of what I'm trying to aspire to is I want to build a go-karting venue for the city. When I mean for the city, I mean I want to create a social enterprise. So within this social enterprise, it would have a go-karting facility and along with a soft play area and obviously some kind of arcades and stuff like that. I know it's a very, very big project, but I just think big. And the thing is, the way I want to build that is building up my reputation with community people so that people can see what I'm trying to do. And then when people believe in what I'm doing, they're going to jump on board. So what I'm trying to do is collate everybody's services and use together. So where you've got 10, say you've got 10 mentoring organizations, yeah, they're all sometimes fighting for the same kind of money, and it kind of causes a bit of conflict sometimes, yeah. So what I'm trying to do is create something that we could all use and use to benefit everybody. So if I could create that social enterprise and then we was to sponsor mentoring companies, it would mean that we would be able to get them under one umbrella. So that means instead of services being everywhere and everywhere, they could come from one base place. And then from there, I wanted to create a hub. So everyone that comes there, we're going to ask them, you know, do you have businesses? Would you like to be part of our projects where we want to send young people on a revolving door of work experience to different places for 1 or 2 days so that they don't experience rejection, they just get experience. And then when people come across that you like, who fit in with your business, you could offer them a job. So I wanted to create things like that and then really interact that space and place with the community, because I feel sorry for my contribution to the gang life within Wolverhampton, because at my age group and when it all started, we was the ones that kind of switched on each other. We were all friends, we used to go to the same youth clubs, used to go to the same stuff, and then suddenly we got involved in guns and gangs and we started living a particular lifestyle that none of us knew what really it was. We just did it. And now I understand the pain and the consequences that that caused. And I've met lots of people, honestly, who've said to me, oh, Jibo, yo, I want to be like you know, when I was young, and they've said that to me. And these people, they've done dirt, they've done things that could even be worse than me. But it was me who inspired that. And that ain't what I want on my back. I want to be remembered for something different. I want to inspire change. I want to inspire that even though we mess up when we're young, when we don't understand what we've done, we can change it. And I also want to put out there that, imagine there's lots of people like me who's been through it and changed, but they're not out there letting people know that that's changed. So we as a community need to use more inspiration so more young people can see people who have overcome adversity, so that it doesn't look like a dark road for them, that there is light at the end of that tunnel. But I really do want people to see how far that I've come, so that other people can do it too. Because I ain't doing anything that other people can't do. All I've done is been able to get over my trauma, basically. If I get over my trauma, that helps me help people, because I use what tools I use on myself, I use it with them. Only the people who have took time out to know the difference that I've made, they're inspired. I see it. They're actually happy for me. And like, I have people who come up to me who me and them was on opposite sides of the fence when we was younger, but they're saying to me, how do I get to do what you're doing, G? But I want to do what you're doing. So I think slowly but surely it is starting to change, but more for the people on the streets that see me, they're seeing that more of that change, not the people who don't be in the streets. They're just still professional people. I think professional people might still not see that change in me yet. If I had a mentor, it would help me structure what it is that I do and help me then attract the kind of people that I'm trying to attract to the programs that I'm trying to do. I was just thinking, because when I look at it, it's like I said, that's Jibo. So when I look at these pictures, I can see and remember my mind was different at that stage. And it's a good reminder to show who I don't want to be again. So the fact that my mum kept this, but she didn't get to see the other things that I've achieved, to like blank this out. It's like, that's the same as like how I think the city can see you when you're part of the original gang life. This is what they're seeing it. And this is what I don't want to be remembered as, because I'm more than that.